Let us turn our attention to the client code. So there is a Vue template here, in index.html, which is quite standard at this point. It contains the layout of these various buttons and these various input of type file, that when the file is chosen, it calls upload file. It's fairly standard. I'll let you read it on your own. The main methods are upload file when the user decides to upload a file, download file when the user decides to download a file, delete file for deleting a file. Okay, and aside from these, there are a few other things going on, to give information about the file size, etc., as you can see, in this UI. But it's all fairly standard, and I think you should be able to read it. And what I want to instead talk about is the JavaScript controller. That is where the interesting action happens. So let us look at the JavaScript. These are the methods. There are just 3 of them, as I mentioned: upload file, delete file, and download file. Okay. There is some information that I use. So this is the app data. There is a file information, name, type, date, path, size. There is a download URL to download it, so that you can click and download it. And then there are flags that essentially determine the behavior of the UI. This tells me whether I'm uploading. This tells me whether I'm deleting. There is a delete in progress, and this tells me whether there is a delete confirmation in progress. Okay, so those are the files that drive the UI. So this is actually fairly standard. And so this file info is actually a computed property. Okay, so the file info that I display here, okay, these so much kilobytes uploaded 10 minutes ago, this is a computed property, and I use this function human file size that somebody wrote, and I found it on Stack Overflow. Somebody kindly wrote it, and I give them credit. And so this converts the file size into something compact and humanly readable, 14.3 kilobytes. And the other interesting thing I do is that I use this library Sugar that you may have noticed already being loaded. If you're curious where this comes from, which is a rightful curiosity, you can look in the templates, in the layout. You will see that at the bottom of the layout, we load Sugar. And you may wonder, what is this Sugar? It certainly sounds pleasant, but what does it do for us? Well, Sugar is able to manipulate various data types in a convenient way. And in particular, I can take the date of the file as came from the server, and I can convert it into a Sugar date, and then I can express it in relative terms, so that this essentially nicely formats the date for me. Uploaded 10 minutes ago, and if I refresh now, it will tell me 24 minutes ago. And so this gives me a pleasant way to represent the dates. But as I mentioned, this file info is a computed property. So it is mentioned here in the creation of the Vue instance. Okay, it's a computed property, file info. And this means that whenever the properties on which file info is based change, whenever the file name changes or the file size, etc., file info will be updated. And so I always have an updated display on the web page. Let us look at the function to upload a file. This will be a prototypical function here. The one to delete will be somewhat similar, and it's really the core of the application. So this function is triggered by the event of the user having chosen a new file, and as we did in the previous lecture, so we can retrieve the input element where the file was chosen. We can fish out the file, and if a file was specified, then we have to worry about uploading it. So what we do in the case we are uploading is that I say, okay, we are uploading. This will trigger some spinner in the UI to indicate that there is stuff in progress. And then I can access actually the file type, the file name, and the file size. And then what I need to do is request the server for authorization to upload. So I do an Axios post to obtain GCS URL. This is, my endpoint on the server. And I say that what I want to do is actually a put, because I want to upload the file. If I said get, I would be asking for permission to get it, but I want a permission to put it. And I say, this is what I do. I want to do a put. I want to do a put of a file with this name and this type. And I wait for the answer. Once I get the answer, I do the following. I store the upload URL and the file path, and then I need to do the upload to GCS. Now here there is a catch. So far we have been using the Axios library in order to contact the server or do HTTP calls to other servers. And so you would expect that to talk to Google Cloud Storage, I also would use the Axios library, but it's actually not so. I have to use the basic library implemented in the browser in order to do HTTP requests. So this basic library is called XML HTTP request. Okay, the problem is that Google Cloud Storage wants to be talked with a very specific protocol. Axios is in the end not able to add the proper headers and the proper authorizations, and always tries to send up files that are encoded not in the right way for what Google Cloud Storage expects. So after trying to use higher level libraries, I concluded the best is really to use the basic library, which is this XML HTTP request, which is built into all modern browsers. So what I do is that I create a new request, and I add a listener for the completion. So let's look at the listener later, but I create a new request, I add the listener for the completion, and then I open the request with a put method to the upload URL that the server kindly gave me. So this is a signed URL. I say asynchronous so that I can load the file up in a streaming way, right? I can stream it up. I don't need to send it in a single blow. And then I send the file. When this is completed, when this request is completed, the load event will be triggered, and I call this function that I called upload complete. This was used to notify the server that the upload went through successfully. And I pass to upload complete the file name, the file type, the file size, and the file path. So upload complete, this is not very complicated, and will essentially do a post to the notification URL saying, hey, look, this file has been uploaded. So now the server knows, can keep track of it, can write it down in the database, and then says, okay, once the server has been notified that the file has been uploaded, everything is done. I obtained the signed URL, I did the upload, I notified the server, the interaction steps 1, 2, 3 we saw are done. And so what I can do now is update the UI here, by saying uploading is false. I set up the file name parameters, type, path, size, etc. I set up the date that the server kindly tells me, and I also set up the download URL. Okay, so this concludes the process of uploading. It's divided into two functions. The first is called upload file, and this essentially asks the server for the URL, and then does the upload via an XML HTTP request. Once this is completed, there is this notification function that notifies the server, and once the notification is successful, sets up the UI in order to mention that the new file has been uploaded. The code for deleting a file is actually quite similar. So there is a bit of trick that I implement in the UI. I have this delete confirmation that enables me to click on the delete button, and this will toggle, and then if I click again, then I confirm the deletion, so that a single stray click does not do any harm, right? And if I re-upload this, so there is a bit of trick for implementing that. But otherwise the code is very similar to the one for uploading actually, because what I do is again, I obtained the deletion URL, which is assigned URL. Okay, I called the server via Axios Post to obtain my deletion URL. You see now the verb is delete. Okay, and once I get it, I will do a delete request to Google Cloud Storage. And once that request will succeed, I have this listener deletion complete that will be activated, and this listener will actually contact the server and confirm that the file has been deleted. So again, ask for a URL, carry out the deletion, notify that the deletion succeeded. Same flow as for the upload, fundamentally. What remains to be done is to implement the download. I want to be able to click here and download the file. Now this seems easy, right? And instead it was actually complicated. What is the problem here? The problem is that the file in the cloud has a random name. Why do I give it a random name, by the way? Because the files that everybody will upload will end up in the same bucket. So I have to give them random names to avoid that my rubber duck will collide with your rubber duck or with another person's rubber duck, right? So my way to ensure that the file names will be unique in the cloud is to use random names. Now the problem is this: if I click these and if I wanted to download it, right? So if you click on some place where you can download a file, for example, I can click here and then I can say save image, and if I do this, the image is given a random name, and that I don't want it. So it turns out the difficulty is one of the silliest. I have my file in the cloud that has a random name, which it should have in order to avoid collisions. So the files in my Google Cloud Storage bucket will have random names. But I want that when I download a file here, I'm offered to download it under its original name. This seems easy, right? You would believe that there is an object in the browser called FileWriter, and just like there is a file reader object, and I can call it up and say, oh, okay, please, write a file with this name where the user wishes. So you can bring up at the dialog to write the file to which I have already given a name, and the user can choose whether to download it and where to download it, right? You would imagine, because this would sort of make sense. But sometimes on the web there are a few things that actually don't make sense. So there is no way to do that in a super simple way. And here I have to admit I was a little bit stuck, and so I asked Massimo in one of our periodic conversations, and Massimo gave me one of these tricks that is so Machiavellian beautiful that really it deserves to be looked at. Now this is, between perversion and beauty in software design. So what did he invent? Let's look at how this download file works. It's just a few lines, but the content is amazing. So when I want to download a file, the first step is that I download it from Google Cloud Storage to JavaScript, so to the internal Vue controller. So what I do is that I build again one of my XML HTTP requests. The type is GET by default. So I get, I use the download URL that I've been given, right? It's asynchronous, so it's a streaming download again. And so this downloads it in the request. And when the request terminates, when I have downloaded the file to JavaScript under my control, I call this doDownload function that does the rest of the did. And so it's here that the dark matter happens, okay? The dark did happens. So what I do is essentially this. I create a fake a tag, so I create a fake link hidden in the page. So the link exists, but it's not in the page anywhere. So this is the element that I create. I create a fake a link. You see, I can create an element that is in the page, except it's not in any visual place in the page. So this is an A tag that is floating somewhere in hyperspace, if you will. Okay, so then what I do is that the request was fulfilled, right? I could download the original file. So I take the response, the request response, and I create one of these data URLs. Maybe I should add a comment here, okay? This creates a data URL out of the file we downloaded. Okay? And by the way, to have this work, I was careful enough to have the response type be a blob. It's a sort of internal thing. You need to get a blob response to then convert this binary blob into a data URL. So I've downloaded the file, I've converted it into a data URL, and I'm setting the href attribute of my A tag to be the data URL. So I'm essentially building this fake thingy that doesn't exist anywhere, that is essentially an A. Href is equal to my data URL. Okay, this is just explanatory. Okay, and so I generated this A tag. Okay, and then I also say in the line below, oh, by the way, the download attribute is gonna be my my file.jpg or whatever you want it to be. Okay, so I created this element that fishes the data from here, so anonymously, and then it will rely on this download attribute to know the file name under which it will be stored. And after I create this fake A tag that doesn't exist anywhere, I click it. Believe it or not, I can click it. I don't have to wait for the user to actually click it. I can click it myself via JavaScript. And this will open the dialog that will enable me to store the file. And once the dark deed is done and the file has been stored, I clean up. I remove my A tag and I remove my data URL because this, is wasting space somewhere in the memory. Incredible, right? This is completely Machiavellian to me. So you create a fake web page element and you interact with it from JavaScript in order to do the download. See, so this is, I find it completely crazy that you actually need this type of code in order to do what you want. But I also find it quite amazing that this does actually do exactly what you want. And so this is what implements this behavior that when I click here, it offers me to save these under rubberduck.jpg, which is, very reasonable to the user, even though, again, the name in the cloud is a randomized name. So it seems a small step, but actually I think it was the hardest, at least, when I set up to develop these. But with these, the explanation is complete. There are no other secrets. Everything else is simple. And so I just want to reiterate that this is a much more sophisticated approach that you will see in most tutorials. It's very sophisticated and incredibly useful. It enables you to upload and download files directly to Google Cloud Storage, avoiding occupying the database with a big pieces of information that would be expensive to store there. You also avoid using the bandwidth up and down your servers that is something that you should be mindful of. And it enables you to actually rely on Google Cloud Storage infrastructure in order to distribute your files to all your clients that may want to look at them. Okay, so this is a huge advantage, and it's a much more sophisticated approach to file handling that you will see in actually most web tutorials. So thank you.